Hi guys, my name is Oliver, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case. On November 6th, 2014, Mexico City police officers found human remains. A part of the torso was found in a vacant lot near the exit from the city. A few days later, bags with arms and legs were found in different parts of the capital. The horrifying fact was the absence of fingers on the limbs. The police sounded the alarm. Apparently, a particularly violent criminal was at work in the region. Squads of officers were assembled and combed the streets. The main goal was to find the head and limbs of the unfortunate man and prevent further crimes. At that moment, everyone was sure that this case was the work of a brutal serial killer. The fingers and head were never found. However, thanks to the professional work of forensic experts, it was determined that the remains belonged to the same person. But due to the absence of fingers and teeth, it was impossible to find out who this person was. The story unfolds in North America. The main character, a resident of Mexico City, Alejandra Lafuente, a searing brunette with gorgeous hair and bright brown eyes, which further emphasized the thick black as tar lashes. She had an athletic, trim figure, which she tried to maintain by practicing fitness, yoga, and breathing exercises. Alejandra loved to take care of herself. She could often be found at a beauty salon, massage, or spa. In warm weather, she lounged on the beach, doing scientific work, and on cloudy days, she could visit tanning salons. In general, we can say that the young woman loved herself very much and considered herself the standard of female attractiveness. Alejandra did not lag behind in terms of career. Her father is a doctor of sciences, a famous psychiatrist, Alberto Dent. He is a luminary of science, dealing with such deviations of the psyche such as schizophrenia and manic disorders. And he is famous not only for his scientific work, but also for his experiments on patients. For Alejandra, her father was an idol. Wanting to achieve the same success, she followed in his footsteps. To do so, she enrolled in the best university for psychiatry and graduated with honors. Her perseverance, resourcefulness, extraordinary intelligence, as well as her father's connections, helped her to write and defend her thesis on manic syndrome. However, in the future, Alejandra did not become engaged in psychiatry. She was attracted by the work of a psychotherapist. Thanks to her father's money, the young woman got a license and opened her office in a new business center in the heart of the capital. There was no shortage of clients. But she only saw women with eating disorders, depression, relationship problems, and low self-esteem came for counseling. Alejandra helped to solve family problems, but as it often happens, her personal life left much to be desired. The young woman's first marriage broke up, but in the end, the couple had 2 children, 2 charming girls with Alejandra's eyes and her father's sense of humor. However, Alejandra was not discouraged. In her opinion, 2 children were no reason to give up on herself. She still dreamed of meeting her other half, a man who could also be a good father to her daughters. Sometime after the couple separated, the ex-husband, whose name is not disclosed, came home to Alejandra. It was a normal practice for the couple. The man would come on weekends to give time to his little girls and help his ex-wife with household chores if needed. However, the ex-husband had no idea that this visit would turn out to be his last. Alejandra asked him to enter the house through the backyard, reasoning that the lock on the front door was jammed. The man made his way into the house. Alejandra said that her youngest daughter was bathing right now and asked him to come into her bathroom, suspecting nothing. The man went in there. There was a ringing silence in the house. There were no sounds, the usual cartoons, the laughter of children. The man went into the bathroom. There was tape on the floor, and there was no daughter in the filled bathtub. He began to realize that something was going wrong. Right at that second, his ex-wife stood behind him with a hammer and delivered a blow with all her might to his head. Then another one. The man fell. Blood was pouring out of the gaping hole in his skull. Everything around him was covered in blood. As the experts later found out, the man had no chance to save himself. Death occurred almost instantly after the first blow with a heavy blunt object. The eldest daughter, who unexpectedly returned early from a friend, became an unwitting witness to this truly horrifying picture. The children often observed their parents' quarrels. Alejandra was determined to be mentally disturbed. She often took it out on her friends. Friends even noticed how the young woman could hit her husband. They often noticed scratches on his arms and neck. As for the housemates, they constantly observed her tantrums and inadequate behavior. But this time, the situation got out of control. The daughter ran out of the house and began to call for help. Almost immediately, a neighbor came running, who then called the police squad. The psychologist was arrested and charged with murder. At the station, the young woman was placed in a cell where she had to stay for a month until her first hearing. At the trial, Alejandra denied her guilt. Lawyers put forward a version of self-defense. According to them, the ex-husband was intensely jealous of Alejandra and made up that she was bringing men into the house, which could negatively affect the psyche of little girls. On the day of the crime, he showed up unplanned at his ex-wife's house, went through the back door hoping to catch his wife with another man. Then he pounced on Alejandra, who was in the bathroom at the time, trying to put together a nightstand. She then had to exert self-defense, in which she delivered 2 blows to the back of her ex-husband's head. On June 14, 2012, the sentence was handed down. Taking into account the evidence provided by the defense and the presence of 2 minor children, Alejandra was sentenced to 1 year and 4 months. Thanks to the coordinated work of lawyers and the money of his father, the term behind bars was replaced by a suspended sentence. A couple of months later, the appeal was filed again with a request to drop the charges. The argument was assault in self-defense. Human rights activists asked for a jury trial. They felt unbearably sorry for the poor woman who was presented at trial as a victim of domestic violence. As a result, the court reviewed the case and handed down an acquittal. After her release, the young woman proceeded to provide her psychological counseling as before. She created an image of a victim of gender inequality who fought for her rights like most women in North America and finally won. This created image made Alejandra even more popular to potential clients. Soon, Maria Alejandra met Alan Carrera, a large Mexican businessman, the son of Adrian Carrera Francis. He was a tall, handsome, and statuesque man. His father had previously been head of special services for the Central District and had achieved considerable success in his career. Alan expanded his business and created a whole chain of construction stores that began to open all over the country. Part of Alan's business was legalized, but the other part, which few people knew about, was closely connected with crime. By the way, it was for this reason that his father was removed from his position when one of his son's financial frauds was uncovered. In addition, Alan had a stake in a criminal group that was engaged in the transportation of psychotropic substances to the United States. Their base was located in a border town and was guarded by purchased police officers. This group controlled a small portion of the trafficking of psychoactive substances in the South. Alan's father was proven to be involved in his son's affairs. The police managed to get a statement out of him, so he was facing a 20-year prison sentence. But on July 18, 2000, Adrian Carrera was released early thanks to the Witness Protection Program. Immediately after his release, he devoted all his time to his son and his legitimate business. The son grew up quickly, adopting his father's views and experiences. After graduating from college, Alan Carrera decided to follow in his father's footsteps and became an entrepreneur. He was very interested in the store of household appliances, which, despite his young years, he completely led himself. This business was not as large as his father's, but it brought good money. There were always a lot of women around him, but Alan, from childhood, was in love with a classmate whom he took as his wife, smart, beautiful, from a good family. The marriage was short but bright. Daddy had a beautiful daughter. However, a lot of work and almost total absence of Alan at home led this marriage to divorce. Alan was extremely hard to part with the woman he loved since high school. New novels did not bring pleasure, and loneliness and sadness led to the fact that the man began to drink. Gradually, this grew into a pernicious habit. In an attempt to cope with prolonged depression and love for alcohol, Alan tried many ways. Books, circles, drips, until one day, fate did not lead the man to a consultation with the famous psychiatrist Alberto, the father of Maria Alejandra, Alan's now ex-wife. Alberto was also going through a difficult divorce. Alan was the only man in the young woman's life, and despite the separation, she could not allow anyone else to her to somehow get rid of her loneliness. Alan's ex-wife also decided to visit a therapist. The psychiatrist with whom Alan was rehabilitated explained that he could not lead both spouses for ethical reasons and therefore recommended the woman to turn to Alejandra. However, it is worth noting that he did not inform the clients that Alejandra was his daughter. Alejandra quickly realized that her patient's ex-husband could be a great match. He was said to be a pleasant man in the prime of life and quite wealthy. Not thinking long, Alejandra asked her client to bring her ex-husband for another consultation. According to the therapist, she would be able to solve their problem in one session and break the strong bond between the former spouses. From the very first minutes of the steamy session, Alejandra began to put her plan to seduce the entrepreneur into action. The result did not wait long. Immediately after the session, Alan offered the therapist a cup of coffee to discuss family problems. For propriety, the young woman at first even refused to go on a date because it was contrary to medical ethics. But the date took place the same evening. Between them, quite quickly spun an affair. Soon Alan's ex-wife found out about it. She was shocked. She even wanted to report the incident to the doctor's ethics committee, but she didn't. Alejandra was a very competent specialist and therefore was able to convince her client to let the situation go. After all, it says jealousy and unwillingness to let go of the former spouse. And so, according to the doctor, a happy future will not work in the commission. Alan's ex-wife decided not to apply, but also when the sessions were over. Meanwhile, the relationship with the newly married couple developed quite rapidly. A few months after the first date, the young people decided to live together. After 2 more months, they decided to legalize their relationship. But Alan did not even suspect what skeletons in his closet hide his fiancée and what were the reasons for divorcing her ex-husband. In April 2014, Alan decided to visit his parents and flew to them for the weekend. It became a great occasion to talk about his beloved and the imminent wedding. Alan's parents were extremely surprised that they would find out such important things so late. They had never heard of Alejandra in their son's life before, which was very strange. A week after the meeting with the parents, the marriage was registered. Interestingly, Alejandra asked her husband not to call her friends and relatives. Invitations were not sent. The wedding was supposed to be modest, and the budget did not allow inviting everyone one would have liked. However, as it later turned out, the bride's father did attend the marriage ceremony. At first, the life of the young family seemed like a fairy tale. Young, happy, with a huge number of plans and desires, but it did not last long. Alejandra could not hide her hysterical character. The horrifying denouement of this story, but no one suspects it yet. The relationship between the newlyweds began to change dramatically. Alan was a rather secretive person, and with friends, details of personal life did not share. Therefore, about what was happening behind the closed doors of the couple, little was known. However, it was obvious that the former relationship gave a crack, and the couple no longer seemed so happy. After meeting Alejandra, Alan distanced himself from his family. The last straw was the wedding to which parents were not invited. After that, they even stopped calling each other. Alan's remaining buddies began to notice that his spouse became more nervous, sometimes behaving inadequately and quickly losing her temper. After a couple of such incidents, Alan was very ashamed and decided to minimize joint meetings. Quarrels in the family occurred on a daily basis and almost always unfounded. One evening, Alejandra, by her own testimony, decided to get into her husband's cell phone. As is usually the case, correspondence with some women was discovered with quite racy content. Of course, it was impossible to turn a blind eye to such things. According to Alejandra, this was the last straw. She reported in court that her husband beat her, insulted and humiliated her in every possible way. When cheating was also discovered, it was pointless to save this marriage. For unknown reasons, Alejandra did not apply traditional methods of psychotherapy and tried to save the relationship. Having thought of her husband's cheating, the young woman decided to deal with Alan with a method already known to her. As soon as she made this decision, all her attention could be focused on creating the perfect murder plan. Meanwhile, Alan continued his usual and measured rhythm of life. He didn't even realize what was in store for him. Alan still rarely communicated with his family, but he could not miss the traditional feast, which the family held annually in honor of his beloved grandfather's birthday. Alan, of course, came to the feast, but his parents made it clear that his wife was not the most welcome guest in their house. This situation pissed Alejandra off and further aggravated the relationship, and the couple was it possible to imagine that this would be the last time the family saw Alan alive. On October 31st, 2014, Alan's phone was last used to send a text message to his family that he had reached home safely after his birthday party. He has not been in touch since then. He hadn't been seen at work for a few days either, which was quite strange because it had never happened before. The entrepreneur was extremely responsible for his work, and soon the launch of a new story door was expected, and the presence of the head was simply necessary. The reason for this was a terrifying plan of the spouse, which she put into action after Alan returned from the holiday. There was another scandal, after which Alejandra decided to immediately dispose of her husband. She added a powerful sleeping pill to the milk he traditionally drank before going to bed. Then she smothered him with a pillow. She enjoyed watching her husband slowly lose consciousness in a pathetic attempt to remove the pillow and take a breath. Then came the hardest part, getting rid of the body. It was a moment she hadn't had time to plan for. Alan was too heavy, so she had to make do with what she had. Time was short, so Alejandra ran to the neighbor's vegetable garden to get an electric saw. With a grim smile on her face, she sawed her husband's body into pieces. Only a true sadist could do such a thing. Then she packed the body parts into garbage bags and had the foresight to cut off fingers and pull teeth. It was these that would help the investigation in identifying the person in case the body was. Alejandra stuffed all the bags into suitcases so that she could remove the corpse from the house without suspicion. But she did not succeed. As dawn approached, Alejandra was unable to leave the house with the suitcase unnoticed. An elderly neighbor who suffered from insomnia watched her from her window. She was a little alarmed by the young woman's early departure. Besides, for some reason, her husband did not help to lift the heavier suitcases, and Alejandra was behaving very strangely. At dawn, Alejandra returned home. This surprised the vigilant neighbor even more. As it would later turn out, she had scattered bags of her ex-husband's remains in different neighborhoods to cover her tracks. As the new day dawned, she went on with her normal life. On November 6, 2014, Mexican police officers discovered the first horrifying find: a human torso with no teeth and no fingers on the hand. The entire police force was put on alert as the incident was egregious in its level of brutality. Less than a day later, other body parts were found in various parts of the city. It is also interesting that the distance between the places where the packages were found was quite significant. Later, this is what would be attributed to Alejandra's long absence from home. All the body parts were sent to the best forensic laboratory, where experts quickly established the fact that all the parts belonged to the same person. In order to avert suspicion from herself, the perpetrator started writing messages to Alan's relatives. She wanted to avert suspicion, but she only made things worse. She didn't even know that her husband had recently distanced himself from the family and had no contact with his relatives. Alejandra informed Alan's parents on his behalf that they were going on vacation and would be out of touch. The whole plan was ruined by Alejandra's father. Alberto began making phone calls to Alan's father's house. He wanted to clarify if his son-in-law's family knew Alejandra's location. Alberto hadn't heard from her in a while, and the patients are very worried about not being able to attend counseling sessions. Later, he calls Alan's relatives again to inform them that his daughter has been found, and that she had to be forcibly admitted to the clinic because she is suffering from depression due to her husband's cheating. This greatly frightened the relatives, and they tried to find Alan, but all was unsuccessful. And then the family of the businessman turned to the police. The laboratory experts decided to compare the remains of the corpse recently found with Alan's characteristics. The similarity was 100%. And his relatives also identified him. It was especially hard for Alan's grandfather. Soon after the identification, he became ill with heart disease because it was his only grandson. The investigation issued a search warrant for Alan's home and office. A hillock of fresh earth was found in the backyard of the house. After digging, the man's fingers and teeth were discovered. The find further shocked the capital city. Alejandra was immediately apprehended. Traces of blood were also found in one of the rooms, as well as on the trunk of the car and in the garage. At first, Alejandra tried to deny her guilt. She hoped that she would be able to get away with it with impunity as she had with her previous husband. But the investigation quickly sorted out the case. The testimony of an elderly witness helped. The time she gave coincided with Alan's estimated time of death. Alejandra used her position to obtain a powerful sleeping pill, the kind of drug only a doctor could get his hands on. This further aggravated the case. The evidence obtained helped establish a link between Alejandra and the brutal massacre of her husband. CCTV cameras also helped trace that the man had gone into the house and never came out of the house again. The fact that the suitcases were taken out was also confirmed by CCTV footage. On December 10th, 2014, the jury reached a verdict. Alejandra was sentenced to life imprisonment for murder with brutality, an attempt to conceal this fact, and the use of official position. All this was not in favor of the former psychotherapist. Her father, who, through the use of connections and bribes, tried to spare his daughter from imprisonment, could not either. But all he managed to do was to keep the trial closed to the public and the press in order to avoid more publicity. However, he did it all for the sake of his own career. Now hardly anyone else will turn to a specialist who raised such a ruthless monster and could not diagnose problems in time with his own daughter. The case of the death of Alejandra's first husband also came to mind at the trial. However, due to the passage of years, the evidence in this case was not found. The version of Alejandra's father's involvement in what happened was also considered. There were suspicions that he was in collusion with his daughter, and they committed crimes on the basis of scientific interest. However, this idea found no evidence. After several appeals from the victims, the sentence was commuted to death. This is an unprecedented situation. Such sentences are extremely rare in Mexico, especially in these times. The defendant is also not entitled to a review of the case. The house and all the property of the accused must go to the family of the victim, although who can be comforted by this if the person can no longer be brought back. Apparently, Alejandra was a pragmatic and cruel woman. She had major mental health issues, although medical examinations denied that she had any. She also harbored the influence of her father and used her official position to carry out her manic plans. Impunity after her first crime had only unleashed her. Alejandra felt invulnerable and continued to do evil. Perhaps Alan would still be alive if this horrible woman had not been acquitted the first time, but it was too late to talk about it now. Thanks for watching. Oliver was with you. Subscribe to the channel. There are many shocking stories ahead. I'll see you again.